Papicello, and welcome to the Value Coffee Talk podcast.
Hi, I'm April Morley, co-founder of Genius Drive, and this podcast is a service of the Enterprise Value Collective, a community for business value-focused leaders and practitioners, and is sponsored by our value consultancy, Genius Drive.
Yeah, and our mission is to help accelerate and optimize the value articulation in each of your customer engagements and throughout your customer lifecycle. And to help us do that better, we've invited Dudley Nostrand here with us today. He is a value leader at SourceGraph, and he's a value leader veteran with a couple of other great programs at Ellucian, at Dynamics and BMC. Welcome, Dudley.
Thank you, Tom. April, great to be here. Nice to see you guys.
Awesome. Well, we're here today to talk about a topic that is really important in folks that are running a value program and are trying to get to that next level of maturity and address an important area of the business, and that's value realization and enabling that post-sale value articulation. Why, Dudley, was value realization so important for you at SourceGraph?
Yeah, good question. So at SourceGraph, and I would imagine at many other kind of SaaS, enterprise SaaS firms, we employ a land and expand model. And so that means that you're usually getting in and trying to land yourself in a smaller fashion and then working towards expanding that footprint, if you will, later on. And so for us, it's the expand part of it that you really want to obviously get the traction on. And to do that, the customers need to see value in the land. And so right away, you're in a value realization kind of mode to try to get that expand motion going. But really, you can look at that land, and we've often done this as maybe a POC. Maybe you've done one, maybe you haven't. But that initial land is really your ability to take proof points and actual data in a customer's environment and then do the actual realization afterwards. So for us, you know, that proof and that show and that illustration of value after the land in the customer's environment, which is what really drove it for us.
Yeah, we've heard from a lot of practitioners across the industry that value realization is one of their biggest challenges. Why do you think it's such a struggle to implement this kind of program?
Yeah, Tom and I have been talking about it for a long time, and I've said it to him and many others. For us, value consultants or value engineers, value realization has been the holy grail for our career, right? It's been the hardest thing to do. It's been the hardest thing to get our arms around and figure out how we're going to re-engage with the customer after you've gone through the pre-sale process of creating a business case, interviewing folks, getting current state, perhaps asking them a lot of questions that they might be not so comfortable in answering as you're kind of, they're opening their kimono and there's a lot of dirty laundry perhaps in there. And the challenge is just that, right? It's getting folks back to the table after they've gone through a buying process and maybe even implemented the software. I mean, let's face it. How often do you ever go back and look at after something you've bought and figure out what the value you've got out of it? I mean, so I think very few people do that. I mean, you might have products in your home or in your car that are constantly reminding you of the value that you're getting, and that's that's the idea. The challenge is you've got people that have maybe moved on from the project that they were working on with you and implementing the software, and maybe they're doing something else. Maybe they've left the company. Maybe a whole nother team has actually taken over ownership of the tool, and getting all of those people back together and trying to get a meeting cadence going, re-looking at the tools, re-looking at the results is hard. It's time. It feels like a project instead of an exercise. And it's just really, really hard, in my opinion, in my experience, to get people to come back to the table and revisit the whole thing.
Yeah. And then what do you think in terms of customer success, which in the beginning was focused on much more customer delight, right? Making sure the customer's happy, making sure they don't have any issues, making sure the deployment went smooth. And for the most part, focusing, at least in the past, on usage and adoption, much more than outcome achievement.
Yeah, and I'll even add another challenge on top of that for us in particular. We sell a very technical product.
Mhm.
Our customer success folks are, in a lot of cases, developers themselves and
Mhm.
ex-developers, and to get them to start thinking about value at a higher level other than adoption and usage, and that's it, is a challenge. Now, they're totally willing and acceptable and capable of doing it. I think it's just a different mindset. And I think
Mhm.
today, value and value realization, as you mentioned, has become such a big part of why people spend money, want to spend money, need to spend money, and we've just had to recenter and reframe the whole kind of relationship piece of the post sale, i.e., customer success, to start talking about problems that are being solved, metrics that are being impacted by our solution and our tools, and like you mentioned, Tom, the outcomes. And again, for a highly technical product, that's kind of just an area where customer success folks may or may not be comfortable.
So you were able to accomplish this at SourceGraph with an embedded value realization approach. So can you share with us more about how you did that?
Yeah, sure. So kind of like for a good part of my career and the time I've been doing this, I've always kind of thought, and there was a company a long time ago, that actually had this. But if you could get visualization of what's happening in the solution or the tool that you're using, and to reaffirm why you bought it in the first place, whether it's showing you, like Calendly shows you how much time you've saved in booking meetings and those kinds of things, like those kinds of feedback mechanisms in like IT and technical tools. I've always thought that to be a very powerful notion, but yet there wasn't a lot of it around at the
Mhm.
time. What we tried to do at SourceGraph was create a dashboard where, at the very least, it foments and starts a conversation around what the tool is providing back to the development organization or the individuals or the development team, in a very simple way. And for us, it's, we sell a developer productivity solution, which is a lot about saving developers time.
Mhm.
Okay, it's very hard to measure the value of someone's time, but we thought we would take a shot at it and show in a dashboard inside the solution the activities and actions that the tool is performing over a period of time, a week, 3 months, 12 months, and assigning a baseline of time saved that we had figured and compiled through many customer interviews and case studies, and have that be out there so that a customer could look at that and be like, wow, is this, like, this is really awesome, or this is really cool, or is this real? Let me get SourceGraph on the phone. I want to talk through this, and talk about what's happening here. And that was really like that's it. All we wanted to do was get the conversation going,
Mhm.
so that we could build a relationship, keep the relationship going, like get the customer and us interacting. And it turns out that those metrics and the telemetry that we're showing in that dashboard, uh, had actually a lot larger impact than just getting people to the table, as we've come to find.
Yeah. Dudley, you're so right. If you make it a part of the solution and it's there, then everyone can leverage it. Otherwise, it becomes a discovery project, one where you have to have some pretty good curiosity skills and sleuthing skills. You have to be almost a value engineer, or at least have some characteristics of that. And
Yeah.
that's difficult to impart to customer success when they're busy with so much else. So I love the fact of instrumentation. And then I think there's a layer on top of that where you've got the metrics now that are being captured by the solution, and you're instrumented it with the time savings. To me, there still needs to be a story that gets told. And I think a
Yeah.
lot of times in QBRs, they're not having those kind of business level story discussions. Did you reshape that part as well to try to get customer success to be better value storytellers with that instrumentation?
Yeah, so yes, and it's obviously still a work in progress, as is everything. But what we're trying to do is and the metrics that are being shown in our solution are really a lot still kind of an early phase. It's a lot around usage and adoption and things like that, and that's fine. It's a V1, but what we're trying to do is take that information, put it in the hands of the customer success folks, and have them maybe foment or create some questions around. Okay, I see that you're using it this way, and it looks like it's saving you a bunch of time here. Can we drill down into what you're actually doing in those cases, in that instance? What are those changes that you're making? What are those things that you're clicking on to have that register as a time savings? And so then we're obviously using that to build a story, because when you're in a QBR, and I think it's fine to show adoption and usage metrics, but the higher up the chain you get, as you guys know, it starts to become a little bit about, okay, so what? That's great, but, and you want to be able to get that impact story going. And so we're trying to have those kind of conversations, and there's a lot of enablement around that we're doing internally, to get those folks to make that connection. Obviously, I'm in those enablement sessions. I'm doing that enablement, but that's really kind of the key, Tom. Just what you said. It's getting those folks at those levels that are having those conversations to be able to cross that chasm, if you will, between the technical metrics and the things that it's showing technically, and what does that mean to the team or the organization. Like you've got to be able to do that, lead that conversation, get people's wheels and their minds spinning around how it's impacting the team, and then get them to the point where they're either repeating it back to you or they're coming up with their own ideas around how it's going.
Love that.
So you had mentioned earlier that the embedded value realization more than piqued the customer's interest. I'd love to hear more about the impact that you've seen of the program and how the customers have been responding.
Yeah, so great question, a great point. It's been very popular. I will just say that we didn't expect it to be quite as popular, in so much as folks are now asking for more. Okay, so that's a good thing, and I think what they're asking for are more metrics that denote actual value. In other words, show me what teams are using it. Show me what they're using it for. Are we solving security vulnerabilities here? Like real detailed usage metrics that are coming out of it. And we want to see, we want to break it up by XYZ. I want to see what teams are doing what. Like, it's really starting to become a productivity dashboard model than more just a kind of SourceGraph, what are we doing with SourceGraph thing. It's more like this tool we want to use to measure productivity of our teams. And myself and my colleagues that came up with this, that's not where we thought it would go, but it seems to be going that way. And, it's great. And I think I'm kind of seeing out there some other solutions from some other companies that are starting to get on board with providing these value related dashboards and metrics. And I think it's great. First of all, like the customers should be clapping their hands and cheering, because this is all going to benefit them, as well as the sales teams, right? Because now you're all looking at the same value kind of at the same time. And so it's really, like, we've gotten a lot of really positive feedback from our customers. I would say more so from larger organizations, only because I feel like, and this is a hypothesis of mine, that the larger development organizations, there's probably it's a little bit more invisible to them in terms of seeing what other teams and individuals are doing, because they're talking about so many people. We're talking about 1,000, 2,000, 10,000 development organizations, and they're really trying to get their hands on productivity, what's actually happening, what teams are doing what, where are they geographically, and do I have the right balance of developers here or develop that whole thing. So
Mhm.
it's really kind of taken off. It's, for us, we're still trying to get our arms around how we do it and put it out there, but the ideas are definitely there.
Yeah. Couple of points on the program to talk about. One is that in your post-sale value realization, you're not going as deep as you're going in pre-sale, right? They don't need a complete business value assessment.
It's true. It's not those large ones that we've probably all done, in our past, and probably people are still doing today. But
Mhm.
at SourceGraph, it's more of a value proposition with maybe one layer of depth to it, I would say, right? Like
Mhm.
if we can't, we're not able to get a whole lot of current state data out of our pre-sale engagement, only because it's very light touch, it's very fast,
Mhm.
and there might be a POC, there might not be a POC, and if there is, it's short. We might send out a survey asking folks questions about their experience, and how surveys go, right? It's not a great like response rate.
Mhm.
And so we do our best to use the baselines that we have, which we're constantly validating with the customers that do allow us to do that. But yeah, it's a lot of value proposition with baselines, and that gets back to what I said earlier, where so the real exercise is the value realization part of it, right? Like
Mhm.
we've got our baselines, but we're really itching to go put that in there and then see later on what the actual results are.
Yeah. Yeah. The other is that I've seen that's worked really well is making sure that you're reiterating the goals and the strategic alignment back through the realization reviews with the customer. I think a lot of times we get lost in maybe the details of value, but you've got to remind them of why they bought in the first place. What are the goals they were looking to achieve? And then also have a discussion with them in the expansion of maybe goals that they might want to expand into.
Yeah, it's a great point, and we find often that because SourceGraph, the solution that we bring to the market, code search, and some of the things we have are kind of newish in fact that we've got to make people understand what we do and what our product does. It's not something that's been around for a long time. So we go into these engagements, and a lot of the time the customer's like, we don't know what it's like to have good code search. Like we don't know what problems this might solve for us, to be
Mhm.
honest. And so, okay, that's fine. We have some ideas. Here's our value drivers and the use cases that we use. And so that works. But really, to your point, going in a value realization process, you have to be able to uncover anything that they're doing with your solution that you hadn't talked about before. I mean, right? Like keep adding on the value.
Yeah.
And it might be the case where they said, yeah, we use it for what we bought it for, and it's really great, but this part that we didn't know that we could use is like a home run for us. We have a feature called batch changes, which allows you to do large scale changes all at one time across your entire
Mhm.
code base in multi repos or a huge mono repo all at once. And a lot of folks we come to and talk about that, they're like, yeah, that's great, but we don't do large scale changes, only because it's such a pain in the neck, and
Mhm.
it would kill us time wise. And so we're estimating the value there, but we really have nothing to go on in the beginning. When we come to value realization, we find that, geez, we're making 14 changes a month, and this is great. And like now we're kind of doing a pre-sale exercise for realization, right? And it kind of works out really well that way. And that's just the nature of the way it's happening for us. And I think that's fine. But you know, one of the other things I wanted to talk about here today is what what I just described does in terms of the relationship that you're having with the customer, because I'm not sure a lot of people or a lot of vendors, if you will, do value realization. So the act of having that practice and process in and of itself, I believe, is could be a differentiator. for between yourself and maybe come renewal time, they might be looking at a competitor. I feel like that process, that end-to-end value life cycle, if you will, can be a relationship like gold chip and be a real differentiator in your relationships.
Such great points you've brought, Dudley. What's the one thing that you'd like to leave the Enterprise Value Collective with today?
I think that was it. I think that having those kinds of relationship fostering processes, especially value realization, because it is relatively new, but it's really the better part of the value life cycle, if you ask me, because it's the real numbers, it's the real customers' data. I would say if you can do things that really enhance the relationship and show the customer that you really actually are trying to show them the value for what they paid for, and not just taking the transaction and kind of treating them okay and or not. I think that right there is the key. And I think value realization is one of those things that can foster a really long-term relationship.
So great. So there you have it. It's all about the relationship with the customer. So thank you so much for joining us on the Value Coffee Talk podcast.
Thank you, guys. It was great talking to you. Loved seeing you guys, and I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Dudley. Please sign up if you haven't yet for the Enterprise Value Collective. You can do that on LinkedIn or on our geniusdrive.com website. Stay in touch with us on the latest events, tools, insights. And then on the podcast, be sure to hit like. Make sure you subscribe so you'll be notified when we have a new episode. And until next time, our Enterprise Value Collective, keep sharing and growing together.